to your show on the radio, and you seem like a friend to me.
So Charlie,
Yes,
welcome to your kitchen.
thank you.
Yeah, it's very kind of you to have me here today. When did you first start playing music?
When I was about 13, 14, there was a girl at school whose brother was in a rock band, and she had an old, I think it was a semi-solid body camera, a semi-solid body guitar that she kept on the top of her wardrobe, we were in the same dormitory at school. And she'd get it down periodically and play a Joan Baez song or something, you know. And so I became interested in that, and I asked her if I could borrow it. And that's when I started, writing a few terrible teenage songs, you know.
Full of angst.
Full of angst. And I come from a musical family. My mum's family, they all played, every one of them. She was in a band called the Tetherdown Night Owls, based in Muswell Hill, because Tetherdown is a road in Muswell Hill. And she played in a sort of dance band, you know, she played piano. And she was just one of those naturally musical people. And she read music, which she tried to make me do, help me do, I mean. and we sort of fell out about that, because I'd learnt to play by ear and copy her, and so I enjoyed, you know, being 6 or 7. I enjoyed being able to play things, classics that I sort of remembered, and play them really badly. But it was a bit like my mum, you know. Whereas when she presented me with a little book, which I still have, by the way, a little theory book, and it was called GBDF and ACE, you know, the notes. GBDF, ACE, and I thought, stupid book, hate it, you know. And anyway, that was so I was already playing piano a bit badly, and then I sort of stopped, and we had a truce. You know, she just said, well, you know, you'll learn it if you want to in your own time, which was kind of smart. And then the guitar came along, the dusty guitar from the top of the wardrobe. And then I bought my first one I cashed in some premium bonds I'd been given. And I bought my first guitar from a music shop in Pinner. It was classical guitar, because that's all I really, that was the one that it looked nice.
What was the very first piece of music that you learnt on it?
Learnt? Oh, well, I think Beatles probably. Beatles or Paul Simon, yeah.
Composed your very first song on it?
I did.
And what was that song called, do you remember?
It was called Everything is Blue. It was really appalling. I think it was kind of like because I'd heard that a lot, that's very Beatles, you know. There's a lot of that. I won't go further, health and safety. It was just appalling, you know, something about blue shaded orange peel lies in a blue baby's hands. It was really I won't say any more, because it'll only come back to bite me.
It was the 60s, wasn't it?
It was the 60s, yes.
Sorry, I shouldn't have said.
We should have said. Oh, you mean the 70s?
I meant the 70s, yes, obviously.
Could you? It was sort of solo until I went to drama school, and I met Julian Littman, and we've both been released from rather strict boarding schools, and we were like, bang, you know, out there, hey, you know. And we used to sit and play in the sort of foyer of this old theatre where the school was based. It was arts educational, and we were the one old building left in the Barbican. You know, they were building the Barbican at that time.
Yeah.
And so, but there was this one little kind of old tooth in the middle of the place, which was the Golden Lane Theatre, and that's where the school was. And we used to sit, when we had a break, we used to sit in the sort of foyer area, and the guitars would come out. In those days, we didn't. I don't remember us writing together in those early days. We played kind of covers. You know, we played Paul Simon songs. We played a sort of incredibly high sort of only something rodents could hear version of Summertime. And we did a gig at the London College of Printing, I remember, and we did a gig at the Load of Hay in Uxbridge, I remember.
Did you say your first love was music?
No, not really. I mean, I was brought up in a really musical family. I used to hear my mum playing the piano, you know, downstairs when I went to bed as a little girl. And my grannies, both my grannies played, and my aunties, you know, they all played piano. So that was sort of in the background. But I wanted to be an actress in a musical, singing, you know. But that was where.
So it was very specific. It wasn't just you wanted to be an actress. You wanted to be an actress in a musical.
Yes, I wanted to sing as well. Yeah.
Let's talk briefly about your theatrical career. Are you still acting now?
In the early 90s, after having done some various acting jobs in between playing gigs and things like this, the most acting I did was every Saturday night we ran a comedy improvisation club. And so that was...
was that the Old Dogs, or...?
That was the Old Dogs. It was called Dogs on Holiday.
Oh, sorry.
That was the name of the... Well, we weren't quite old dogs, actually. No, the Dogs on Holiday was it was supposed to signify two things that were the most fun. You know, a dog, and plus you had a dog on holiday. That's double the fun. That was the kind of, you know, supposed to indicate that. And in the end, we became known as the Hurricane Club because that was the name of our club. So that was an acting gig because although we were improvising, we were all performing, acting, you know. But I started out as an actress. My first job was with in repertory theatre in Newcastle for 2 years, which was great because it's how I got my equity card, which you needed in those days. So it was 2 years of work.
And the famous director who was there at the time was?
Michael Bogdanov. Sadly no longer with us, but Michael was an incredible director because he'd learnt with Peter Brook at the Royal Shakespeare Company, so everything was, nothing was done in a straight way. Everything was sort of exaggerated or done, you know, on a trampoline or on a scaffold, or, you know, I mean, there was no production was done in a straight, presented in a straight way. And, you know, being 18 years old, I was like, this is fantastic, you know, this is cutting edge theatre I'm at now. And I couldn't believe my luck, you know, I loved it, absolutely loved it. I came back to London, and Pinner, and I did sort of little acting jobs. You know, little acting jobs, little bits of fringe and so on, and then we did the
we're getting there, aren't we?
The R word.
Yeah.
Me and Julian Littman and an actor called Carl Johnson, who you'll know because he works all the time. He was up at Newcastle. And
was Julian at Newcastle too?
Yes, we got Julian up there as well. I was there for a year, and then in the second year when they said stay on, there were a couple of productions, and we went, this is perfect for Julian. You know, they liked actor musicians up there. That was how I got the job, being an actor musician. You know, so he was up there. Carl was up there, who was my boyfriend, and we got the gig doing Rainbow.
You can't stop there.
Can't stop there. It was, it was 18 months of writing 3 songs a week, which was quite a good training. You were given a brief, you know, you know, we even then really we didn't want to be kind of. They wanted us to be wholesome and you know, of course, because it was for young children. So we weren't trying to be subversive in that way, but we didn't just want to be too wholesome.
You wanted a bit of cutting edge.
We tried to sneak that in, yeah, we did, yeah. But in as much as you could, wearing a sort of stripy top and dungarees, which was kind of par for the course. Although I've seen some photographs of me wearing kind of these big blocky heels, where it looks like I'm wearing a medical boot. But that was fashion then. We all kind of went our separate ways, really. And I did various bits of TV and fringe theatre and that sort of thing. And then I just kept being pulled back in the direction of music. It just followed me, and I was busy going, go away, I'm going to the Royal Shakespeare Company. In the end, it's nice to be wanted, and the opportunities were there. I started playing to replace a friend of mine, Sam Mitchell, who was playing in the Pancake House in Westbourne Grove, and he wanted somebody to take over from him on Monday nights, which I did, but I didn't know enough material. I've talked about this before, but it was a time when I hadn't really written very much at all. Really through Carl, I was introduced into a lot more stuff than I would otherwise have discovered. People like Robert Johnson and a lot of bluegrass as well, and also sort of more kind of country stuff like the Flying Burrito Brothers and that sort of thing. And so we would sit and play that at home.
Well, you were still playing covers mostly at this stage?
Yeah, country and bluegrass and old type. Of course, big influence on me, Jimmy Rogers, the yodeling brakeman. But I was more keen on his ballads and this sort of more lyrical stuff. But I might have had some sort of beginnings of ideas, because when I started listening to people like Loudon Wainwright and the McGarrigles, which came a little bit later, I was really inspired. So I didn't really start writing my own stuff until about, seriously, for me, until about 1975, 4 or 5 really, that I actually started putting together songs like Fear of Flying and various other songs that then ended up on my first album.
The songwriting process for you, describe that if you can, please.
Difficult. Sometimes you get a gift, you get an idea that comes almost fully fledged, and you just have to follow it, chase it down, pin it down, and do the fine tuning. That's rare, and mostly it's, if you're lucky, in my case, it's a good idea that has legs. And then I write the first little bit of it, and then there's this massive desert of what could be written afterwards, and I have to just dig in and follow that and try and remember the first taste of it, the flavour of the thing, in order to be true to the original idea. And sometimes you can do that, and you it's good, and then you listen to it, after a day, and you go, that's rubbish, and then you have to throw it away. I'm not as prolific as some people, because I do throw a lot of stuff away. A lot of it is strangled at birth. Although I do keep, I'm quite environmentally conscious about my songs, and I do recycle tiny little bits that I've found.
So sometimes you might put a song together that's composed of 3 ideas that you may have had at different times.
Well, it's usually one central idea, but it'll be maybe with a line or two that I remember from another song that didn't make it.
Is the idea usually musical or usually lyrical?
It's both. It's the concept of it, i.e. usually a title, is a good thing for me, and then I can follow that. but I will have to work that in musically, you know what I mean? That has to. I can't write a whole song lyrically unless it's for someone else. I mean, I do that for other people. You know, they'll give me some music and I'll do the lyrics for them. You know. Yeah, sometimes a song will start purely from a musical point of view. You know what I mean? I'll discover the good thing about being not a player like someone like Martin Simpson is that, in my own defence, you know, when I discover a new chord or a new sequence, and that's a big thing for me, you know what I mean? And so sometimes it can set me off. For instance, when I discovered that slightly discordant little I mean, when I wrote a song called Firewater, which was about hanging out with a drunk, and that started here, and I was just playing around. This was kind of a couple of years later, and I just went up the keyboard there, and then I've been thinking about. This was a song called Man in Bed, and the whole process of that was thinking about how different the experience of sharing a bed with somebody who you are sharing a bed with for the first time is to sharing a bed with somebody who you've been with a long time, and how still you know, they're the same person inside, and you may know them really well. Hopefully you know each other really well if you've been together a long time, but that when you dream, it's personal. You know, it's somewhere else you go, and this that just seemed kind of a strange thing to embody, a kind of slightly weird thing, you know. There's a man in bed, he's waiting for me, and in the dark I can hear the rhythm of his breathing, and I can see his shape, his body like a color on the white sheet, and I lie next to him, feel the unfamiliar heat, and I want him. There's a man in bed, don't wake him, do not disturb. What's he dreaming of? Is he making plans or making jam or making love? Sometimes I'll hear fragments of a conversation unknown, half-remembered words, vapor trails of flights he makes alone, and I love him, but I can't follow.
This is maybe a good point, a moment to ask you about some of the songs you've written for other people.
Yes.
So, and amongst them, a UK #1, maybe say, with Surprisingly, Ain't No Doubt by Jimmy Nail.
Yes.
Back in the 90s, I think that was.
Yes,
Is it?
that's right, yeah.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I'd worked a lot with Danny Sugar, who's a fantastic keyboard player. I won't go into how I met him because he'll never let me forget it. He played for me for an audition. That's another story, where I forgot all the words, and that's another story. But anyway...
we could come back to those.
We could come back to that, yes. So, yeah, we've been writing for various people, jobbing songwriting, to a brief, and we'd had a bit of success, with various covers here and there, especially in Europe actually, which is hits in Europe, unless they come over here. Totally secret. You could be making it up.
There was an Israeli band, wasn't there?
Well, I had a number one in Israel, actually.
Yeah. Wow.
Which I only found out about, kind of like the week it was number one. There's somebody got in touch and said, oh, by the way, you're number one in the charts in Israel. And what? And then, this was 1996, and I'd had a song called Time Goes By, which was on an album, my only album between 1982 and 1996. There was a massive gap there where I went, I'm not playing anymore. I'm not, this record business stuff. I hate it. So I didn't make any records. I just hated, the whole A&R process, all that stuff, being kind of moulded into, some sort of shape. And then, anyway, I retired hurt at that point, and I just carried on acting and doing various things. Anyway, long story short, there was an album called Things Change, which came out in 1995, I think, 94 and 95. And there was a song on that called Time Goes By, and that was discovered and remixed into a dance hit by three Italians called Sold Out.
SOULED, wasn't it? Sold Out?
No, actually, curiously enough, there also already is a band called Sold, as you'd expect, SOULED. There is a band called that, but this was Sold Out, and they were a remix team, and they worked out of Naples, and they wanted to do a dance version of it, and so, interesting, that never happened to me before, and then it went on to be a hit in Italy.
So was it still you singing and everything?
Yeah,
They just remixed it all, put in the drum beats and etc.
There's several mixes of it. There's about, 5-6 different mixes of it, all by...
so this was not somebody covering one of your records, this was you still, but...
This was me doing but it was bizarre. I mean, they were actually quite faithful to the song, because, some mixes, of course, you can't even see a sign of the song, there's a faint, like one line of it or something, which is repeated. They were actually quite faithful to it.
Did you get any money out of it?
Funny you should say that. I'm still owed money for that.
Okay, so not likely to see any, basically.
I'm not likely to see any of that. There's been, I don't know what the situation is now with earning money out of Italy, but people used to say at that time, they used to say, make sure you're paid up front.
Difficult with the cover.
Quite difficult, yes. Yeah. Anyway, so that became a hit in Italy, a pop hit, in the pop charts. It's bizarre. And I went over there and went to a radio station, and there was a crowd of people outside. And they were doing a kind of like a day of, it was to do with something else. Anyway, there were loads of people coming and going, lots of other Italian artists and things. And a big crowd outside the radio station, and I said, who are they waiting for? And they said, you. And I went, what?
Did you get to the top 10 then?
Yeah, I got to number 6 or something.
Wow.
Yeah, it was bizarre. Anyway, but it got to later on, it got to number 1 in Italy, in Israel. Only countries beginning with I. I'm waiting for Iceland still. But they got in touch and said, you're number 1 And my manager at the time said, oh well, you know, we went into overdrive, said maybe she should come out and promote it, you know, shall we? And they said, no, I wouldn't bother, you know, it's sold, it's only a small country, it's sold as many as it's ever going to sell. And that was it. Bizarre. Danny Sugar and Guy Pratt, who's a bass player, wonderful bass player, they were working with Jimmy Nail, and they needed some help with the lyric and possibly the melody. That was up for grabs as well. And they were working on this track, and they came to me and said, can you think of anything for this? And so that's what the result was. And the initial idea was, I thought it would be better to speak it than sing it, because the verses are kind of like just a bed of kind of a simple chord structure, and I didn't, a tune didn't immediately spring to mind, so I thought, I wonder if I could get Jimmy to speak it, and he was up for that idea. And yeah, so and it's an unusual, it was even unusual at that point, because its instrumentation was kind of weird for the time. I mean, there's a trombone solo, for God's sake, which is great, and also the tune is played by the bass. Guy Pratt plays the tune, which is kind of unusual. One thing that has been a blessing and a curse has been that writing for people who are better known than me means that obviously those names are more are sexier to mention, you know, in anything written about me or spoken about me. And so, you know, when you say Jimmy Nail, Celine Dion, Lisa Stansfield, Sheena Easton, you know, people naturally enough would go, well, I mean, yeah, we know them, but is she going to, what's she like? You know, what does she do? You know, and the answer is none of the above. You know, when I do something myself, my stuff is nothing like any of that. You know, musically speaking. I mean, obviously it's the sometimes the same voice curating the lyric, if you see what I mean, because it's me. But I'm not like any of those people at all. You know, absolutely the reverse. I mean, I couldn't be less like Celine Dion and even less like Jimmy Nail. But it's just that they would get mentioned, you know, in a what have you done then? Why are you here? I've written songs for I mean, in the case of actually, I've been heading for someone else. I mean, when I wrote Rain, Tax, It's Inevitable with Terry Britton, we actually wrote that for Brandy and Monica, you know, who were an R&B duo in the 90s, early 90s, and that's where we were pointing it for them, and then it got done by Celine Dion, you know, yeah.
What changed for you then, really?
I got a deal.
How did that come about, your deal with Ireland?
Well, I think, you know, the system was the same as it probably still is in some respects. There was a bit of a buzz. We were often supporting a band called Meal Ticket, who were big on the circuit at that point. And just kind of word got out, and then some people from Island Records came along. And
was Chris Blackwell involved? Was it Chris Blackwell?
Yeah.
Because he was the guiding light or the force behind Island.
He was very much so. He was I mean, what Chris wanted happened. You know, he didn't have to go to a board of people. He was the board. You know, he ran it. And his A&R guy, you know, said he'd been to see me, and I mean, you know, we had demos and things by then, you know, and that stuff was run past him, and he said, yeah.
Had you actually recorded as a demo pilot of the Airways at this point?
Yes, we had. We've got several versions of it, actually, several versions, and Fear of Flying. And yeah, several. There were quite a lot of demos going down at that point, you know.
So who decided to release that as a single? Was that Chris or you, or a combination?
It was Ireland. I mean, how those decisions were made I think, the A&R department would, put their heads together and, discuss it, and then it would be run past Chris, certainly, in those days. However, then what happened was, Island kind of did a deal with Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers became the next level of decisions for the rest of the world, certainly, and that's where it all went a bit wonky for Dore.
Yeah. The thing is, I mean, I noted, one of the things I noted was that it got to about number 11, I think, in the US charts.
Yeah.
And only number 66, I think it was, in the UK charts.
Yeah.
Did they not promote it at all in the UK?
Well, they did, actually. It was never off the radio. That's why people had the impression that it was a much bigger hit than it actually was, chart-wise. But it took off more in the States, but they wouldn't pay for me to go out there. That's what Warner's said, yeah, well, let's see how it goes and maybe the next single. That's apparently what happened. So, and the record that went up the charts neck and neck with me was Christopher Cross, Ride Like the Wind, and he was signed to Warner's, so he was direct signing, not an Island signing, and he was American, and I watched that song kind of, we went up the charts together, and then he went, and he got to number 1, and I stayed at number 11.
Politics, eh?
Well,
a bit.
At least I know that song got there. No money changed hands. I know that song got there on whatever merits it happened to have at the time. Whatever bells it rang.
What do you see? You're still writing original music and fantastic album Dark Matter, which you released in 2017, and are no doubt working on your next album, which will take whatever time it takes. I totally understand all that.
Well, it'll take until we've got the launch planned for June 2020, so it has to be finished by then. So there's nothing like a deadline.
No.
To get a procrastinator off our arse.
Yeah. Where do you see your future lying? I mean, one of the things that I was really touched by was your comment about live music when you played Mrs. Yarrington's, and you obviously have a deep passion for live music. Is that much more important to you than, let's say, writing a hit single or something like this?
Yes, it is, because I enjoy the interaction with an audience. That's fundamental, I think, and obviously, if you write a song that gets played on the radio and has lots of hits on YouTube or whatever, more people are going to come to your gigs, which is great, so it's a sort of circle. But that can't be the initial thrust behind it. It has to be that it's a song that I stand by, because if it's a song that I stopped, for myself anyway, writing those kind of songs where I'm thinking, well, will this get on the playlist, as soon as I stopped doing that, there was an enormous freedom, happened. Even on the Things Change album in 1995 or 6, whichever year that came out, I was still slightly had an ear to, what'll be on the playlist, And so, although some songs did escape that process on that album, some of them, to me, still sound like I'm trying to please,
Do you have one song that for you sort of says it all, or that you like the most after all this time, or does it keep changing?
I think Your Newest Baby is often your favourite, there are songs, plural, that are sort of more special to me, I suppose. I was pleased with Breakfast of Neutrinos on the Dark Matter album because somehow, although it started from an angle writing about something I found interesting and curious, which is the history of the neutrino, and this is from somebody who had zero science education. It just sounded fascinating and funny to me. but that it also contained a personal aspect to it, which is basically about, you know, a relationship where somebody, through no fault of their own, touches you very deeply, you know, and then moves on, you know, and it's not their fault, probably, you know, that they had that effect on you, but that happened, and that is a direct parallel with the neutrino, that it just passes through, you know, leaving a wake of some sort of destruction behind it, you know, and I thought that was interesting. So I was pleased that seemed to work, and looking like my mother, acting like my dad, that. I mean, if I'm talking about songs that I could go, that's what I do, you know, and I know it's not for everybody, you know, it's so personal. You know, I don't like kale, you know, that's just a personal thing.
I agree with you.
It's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bitter.
Disgusting.
But you know, this doesn't mean kale's horrible. And people, you know, feel the same about music. You know, your status quo is my Loudon Wainwright, you know.
Yeah. Yes. On that note, perhaps we should have a little bit of music.
Okay. Yeah, the ukulele. It's a funny little beast. It can bite you because it's. I know I go on about this in gigs, but it really is. It's one of those things where, you know, because you're playing a lot of, technically speaking, when you play this bottom note, and then you play this note, you've got a comparison to make, and so you can hear if one of them's out of tune, and that's something you can't hear, you know, if you're not doubling a note, and so the ukulele can basically screw you up by pointing out where you're not entirely in tune, and they're very sensitive to temperature change. That's my excuse anyway. But yeah, so I do like it though, and I like this little tenor, because it's kind of mellow, and I like that. It's got a kind of simplicity to it, and it's, you know, if it works on the ukulele, as they say, you know, hopefully it'll work in a bigger arena, so to speak, musically, you know. When I wrote A Dog Out Looking for His Day, I had originally intended that to be written on the piano. In fact, I started out some chords on the piano for it, and it was going to be a very kind of, it was going to be almost the film of a dog, you know, going out looking for his day. But I only started the very beginning of something on the piano for that, and then I was playing the ukulele, just mucking around, and I don't know, it just sort of it shuffled over to the ukulele, and I had no intention of it being this song, you know, because it's so not what I had in mind musically. He's immortal, 'cause he can be. No contingent, there's no plan B. He's a dog out looking for his day. Got no diary, there's no schedule. Sideways running in his bed, you'll know he's only looking for his day. And he forgives me everything, each careless human slight, the shortest walk, the longest hours of waiting. Out too late when I come home, the reassuring metronome of tail on floor, be sure he knows I'm guilty. Dark eyes melting hot molasses, author of those noxious gases. He's a dog out looking for his day. And I forgive him everything, each muddy headlong rush, his willful disregard for things of beauty. And sometimes we will disagree on what is edible or rotten, but canine logic will prevail, and details they are soon forgotten. What does he care for infinity? One day I'll call, he won't come to me, but he's a dog out looking, he's a dog out looking, he's a dog out looking for his day. And that wasn't what I intended at all. A fabulous player isn't necessarily a fabulous songwriter, you know what I mean? And you can get, especially if you're me and you're kind of quite a basic player, you can, certainly this used to happen in the past, I get very, very impressed by the fabulous playing, you know, go, oh yes, gosh, yes, let's use that. And actually sometimes it gets in the way, you know, I mean, I would always get a better player than me to play certain bits on my albums, always, you know what I mean? I mean, I want it to be good, you know, but it doesn't necessarily follow that fabulous playing makes a fabulous song.
Charlie, thank you very much for letting me invade your peace and relative sanity on this day. Well, okay, relative sanity. And I'm very appreciative of all that, and I'm a big fan now, so just keep it going, whatever you're doing. It works for me.
Thank you.
And of course, we should mention to people that they can find you, and your website address is?
CharlieDore.com.
How easy is that? CharlieDore.com. And I can certainly recommend the music. So check her out, ladies and gentlemen.